Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of Scales Deconstructed. Last episode we did the major scale, and this week we are going to expand on that and do the other mode that's most often associated with a major chord, and that's going to be the Lydian mode. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so for anybody who is unsure as to what a Lydian mode is, it's a major scale with a raised 4. So if you know your G major scale, G, A, B, C, right? C would normally be the 4 of a major scale, but we're going to raise that to C sharp. So now intervallically, instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Alternatively, you can also just think of it as the fourth mode of the major scale. That's where it's coming from. But whenever I'm thinking in modes, I always prefer to, analyze it in terms of a major scale or a minor scale with one note that's different, because then I can just take all of the major and minor stuff that I already know, and I just have to modify one note, and I get a whole new sound. And so the chord that's most often associated with Lydian is the major 7, flat 5, or sharp 11, whatever you prefer to call it, which would be this voicing, right? So instead of doing G major 7, you take that 5 and you lower it to the sharp 11. Okay, so part 1, as always, we're going to do our intervals. So we're going to start out with thirds, going up the scale in thirds. And if you would like PDFs of all of these exercises and an additional 2 exercises per interval and per arpeggio exercise, you can become a patron for $5 a month and you get access to all of these PDFs. You can do that at patreon.com/MikeGaudetteMusic if you're interested. So we're going to start out with thirds going through the Lydian mode. So we're going to start with G and B and work it through. Now backwards. Okay, now I'm going to change the pattern. I'm going to go down the first one, but then up the second one. So instead of this, I'm going to have... And now if I work all of that through the scale, I have... Alright, now going backwards, there's 2 different ways that you can go about doing it. You can go down and up, or you can go up and down. I prefer to go up and then down because then I'm doing the reverse of the original pattern. The original pattern, I went down and then up. So down, up, the reverse would be up, down. So you can do either one, but I prefer this one because it's a little bit harder. So it's, more beneficial, I think, in terms of just getting a good finger workout. So then I would have this. Now we have fourths, and there are some really cool groupings in this. So we start with G to C sharp, and the fingering gets a little tricky here. I'm doing it pretty much all in second position, so I'm starting with my middle finger and then my ring finger. So now going up in fourths, we have... Okay, and then backwards. Okay, now I'm going to change the pattern. I'm going to go down the first one and then up the second one. So now I have... Alright, now backwards. Okay, now we're going to go up in fifths, so G, and then the fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, G to D, right? So now if we go up the scale in fifths, we have this. Now backwards. And I would recommend going through these and seeing if you find any like 2-note groupings that you really like the sound of. So like for example, I really like the F sharp to C sharp. Right, so if I know I like the sound of that against G, try to find it on a couple of different spots on the neck and see if maybe you can work in some of those notes when you're improvising, because now it gives you some different intervallic options. If you like the sound of two notes together, you can just try to start utilizing that over whatever, you know, in this case, a major chord, you can start utilizing that if you want to get more of a Lydian sound. So for the next pattern, we're going to go down the first one and then up the second one, which will give us this. And then backwards. Now we have our sixths, so G to E, and then working it through the scale, we get this. Now backwards. Now we're going to change it. We're going to go down the first one, up the second one. Now backwards. Okay, for the last interval grouping, we're going to do sevenths, which gives us a little bit more string skipping, a couple more awkward fingerings, but now we have this from G to F sharp. Going up the scale, we have... backwards. Now down one and up the other. Now backwards. Okay, so that is our interval portion. Now we're going to switch over to arpeggios. So now if we go through the Lydian mode and we play an arpeggio off of each note, we get this. The 1 is major, so G major. The 2 is going to be major as well, so A major. 3 is minor, B minor. The 4, the sharp 4, technically is diminished, so C sharp diminished. The 5 is major, D major. The E is minor, 6, minor, right? And then the 7 is minor. And then back to major. So the two things that make this different from a regular major scale is normally in Ionian, right? The 2 chord is minor, but with Lydian it's major. And then normally the 7 is diminished in Ionian. In this case it's minor, which is really nice sound, right? Like play like an F sharp minor over G. That's a really pretty sound that just completely outlines that Lydian tonality. So if we go up that arpeggio exercise, we have... backwards. Now if we go down one and up the other, we have backwards. Okay, and then on the Patreon, I'm also doing this with, so there's 2 additional patterns for the arpeggios, and then there's also 4 patterns also doing this with 7th arpeggios as well. So if you're interested in that, check out the Patreon if you'd like. But that's our arpeggio stuff, and then the last segment we're going to do is dyads. So dyads are 2-note groupings, just playing 2 notes at the same time. So all I'm going to do now is take all of those interval patterns that we did and play them as 2-note groupings instead of playing them as 1 note at a time. And one thing that I actually didn't include in the first episode that I thought about afterwards is you can also do seconds as dyads too. So I'm actually going to start with seconds. So I'm going to play G and A. You get these really dense sounds, but this could be really cool, especially if you could figure out ways to kind of work these into some voicings, particularly like on the upper strings against a bass note. You can get some really interesting sounds. So it's going to be like this. Okay. So now we're going to go up in thirds, and that's going to give us this. Fourths. Fifths. Sixths. last one, sevenths. And as always, I would recommend doing these exercises in as many different positions on the neck as possible. Get really comfortable. Just start out, down here, and then when you feel like you're ready to move on, see if you can try a different spot. Just find a different G note and see if you can work out all these arpeggios and intervals in a different position on the neck. And just being able to do stuff like this will drastically help your knowledge of scales all throughout the neck, and just understanding the inner workings of what's going on in these scales and all the different interval and arpeggio combinations. And yeah, that's about it. So hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope you learned something, and I appreciate you guys watching. I will see you at the next episode. Take care.